Greetings, devout listeners of Ghosts in the Mountains. Caleb here, and I wanted to let you all know that there will be a small change to the show going forward. Dr. Captain Burgess and I have decided, though, we're not going to bleep out the F-bombs anymore, because, hey, who the are we kidding? Okay, I bleeped that one out, but going forward, no more bleeping of the F-bombs. Because, I mean, come on, you guys know what we're saying. Austin and I are a bunch of foul-mouthed old punk rockers, so it's only fitting. But that said, sorry for anybody that doesn't like cursing, but we are what we are, and we're not trying to be anybody else. So with that down, we hope you continue listening to Ghosts in the Mountains, and we hope you enjoy this next episode diving deep into the Cherokee lore of the legend of Judaculla.
The Appalachian Mountains are some of the oldest in the world, and we just happen to live in them. One thing we can tell you, there are ghosts in the mountains.
Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Ghosts in the Mountains. I am your host, Caleb Hanks, and with me as always, the great, the wonderful, the doctor, the captain, neither doctor nor captor, Dr. Captain, neither doctor nor captor, Dr. Captor, Captain. Austin Burgess, how are you tonight, brother man?
I'm doing great tonight. I thought I was going to have to jump in for the intro there for a second. You mysteriously vanished from the room.
Indeed, I was caught in one of Alan Greenfield's portals, but I came back.
I'm glad you made it back. I was on the spot. I was like, oh my God, here it goes.
I do that to you intentionally because one day I might not be here, Austin. And by that, I mean, I might just have the flu.
You know, maybe we'll just throw people off and I'll do the intro one day and we'll have you just lead the research on that and we'll flip the script a little bit.
One day we'll do that and it will be the least accurate historical episode we ever do. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us on another episode of Ghosts in the Mountains. We recently kind of, put in our profile some information that I think more accurately describes our show, where we're talking about, this is unscripted. We do the good research. We do all the thinking that needs to be done. And by that, I mean, Austin does a very good job with that. And I tell fart jokes. But I think we're becoming what we're always meant to be.
Yeah, that checks out to me. So hopefully this SEO will bring some listeners to us that don't complain about some rambling.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. That's what we're embracing. We're embracing the fact that we're a bunch of rambling assholes. And, that's a good band name. And there's a lot of podcasts out there that are really awesome. I mentioned frequently Weird Darkness, where they tell like really spooky cinematic stories. And we do that from time to time, which I genuinely enjoy doing. But, the nature of our podcast is just a little bit more conversational. And I think that we just kind of wanted to acknowledge that and put that out there to the people, at least, so people aren't thrown off guard. People aren't coming here expecting us to just be stories, and then that's not what they're getting. So,
yeah, heard.
But that said, tonight we're all stories.
Well, this is a long one, so we probably should get into it here. And this is one that's been a long time coming. And I just want to go ahead and start this episode off by saying I do think I owe someone a pretty long overdue apology. It's probably been a long time coming.
What'd you do?
It wasn't till this week that I realized that I might have overlooked or maybe even kind of dismissed something without zooming out and looking at the full picture on something in a previous episode. So, with that being said, I would like to apologize to Mr. Boojum, Hootenanny, and any other descendants of the Boojum family that might happen to hear this episode. Did not mean to discredit your story without having all the information that I should have, and my apology on that.
Are you saying the Boojum's real?
I'm not going to go that far, but I'm going to say that I might have jumped to some conclusions in that episode without having the full broad view. And there's really one specific piece of information that I overlooked on this. So if you recall back to one of our very, very first episodes on the Boojum, we traced the origins of that legend back to an individual named Peter Thompson, who was the founder of the Champion Fiber, like the infamous paper mill over in Canton. And he happened to also be a popular children's book publisher before moving into Western North Carolina. Well, in the Boojum episode, I put this theory out there that Peter, coming from this background in children's stories, likely invented the legend of the Boojum as a way of enriching the folklore in his new home of Western North Carolina, which seemed like a plausible conclusion at the time. I also kind of wondered aloud if Peter inventing this story was just a bit of a way of maybe like whitewashing some of the darker history of the region, with the relocation of the Cherokee people and, basically providing this Appalachian folklore tale that somewhat rewrites some of the actual legends and history that exist in the area. Well, I don't think I was too far off base, but I think I did jump the gun in assuming that Peter might have completely invented the story on his own. Because while diving into the Cherokee tradition and tales of the Judaculla this week, I found a version of the story that I'd actually never heard before that has some pretty strong and noticeable crossover to the story of Boojum and Hootenanny.
And this is like legitimate Cherokee lore.
Legitimate Cherokee lore coming straight from James Mooney, who we've talked about in previous episodes, but he was this guy that spent like a significant chunk of time out in like the 1880s living amongst the Cherokee tribe, interviewing various members, just gathering and documenting their lore and stories. And his documented account of the legend of Judaculla, which, is already kind of a anglicized name of the traditional Cherokee name, Sulkalu.
Yeah.
So anyways, he is the one who kind of really documented all these Cherokee legends and put them into print and press so they could be preserved today, because prior to that, they really just existed in the oral tradition. So with that being said, I think the actual origin of the Boojum story might have some roots in Cherokee tradition and might not have been completely pulled out of Peter's ass like I kind of previously alluded to.
Well,
yeah. So, I owe the Boojum family an apology. That's what I'll lead it as. But,
sorry, Boojums. We're sorry.
With that said, I think it's a good spot for me to, stop rambling and get into this traditional Cherokee story of the Judaculla, or Sulkalu, that I just mentioned. And yeah, this was collected directly from Cherokee tribe members that were interviewed over various years when James Mooney was out there collecting and documenting for his book that was titled Myths of the Cherokee. Well, according to his account on this whole legend, it's a pretty decently long story here. And it starts off with this brave Cherokee warrior that was killed in battle, leaving behind a widow, a son, and a daughter. Now, the son, he was also known for being like a skilled warrior, like his father, and he was treated as a hero during like times of war and battle with other tribes. But he was also known for being just a bad hunter, and he struggled to provide food for his mother and sister. So due to this, the family primarily survived off handouts from other villagers for years, and this was kind of embarrassing, kind of a little humbling and humiliating for them. And it was just something that the family, or specifically the mother, really wanted to overcome. Well, one day, the daughter went out for a walk near their home in the Balsam Mountains, and she followed a stream, eventually arriving at this small clearing surrounded by laurels and azaleas and rhododendron and all these other flowers. And according to this account, the fragrance of the flowers combined with the sound of the flowing water put her in this relaxed state, and she laid down, and before she knew it, she had drifted off to sleep. And she soon realized that the place where she fell asleep in, they say this is a place where the veil was thin, and by falling asleep here, she entered this dreamlike state that some attribute to being the spirit world. Well, upon entering this world, she was approached by a male spirit that she described as being handsome, graceful, and strong. The two shared an almost instant connection and attraction, so much so that this male spirit quickly asked for the woman's hand in marriage. And this woman, she kind of laughed, not entirely sure if she was dreaming or not or what was going on, but she politely explained to the spirit that her mother would only allow her to marry a great hunter that could provide for her and her family. And the spirit just let out this bellowing laugh and responded, "Oh, but I am a great hunter." And with this, the woman just kind of found herself awakening back from her slumber, back in the physical world. still not really sure what had happened or if this had all been a dream. But little did she know that this was her first experience with Sulkaloo, or as we know him, Judaculla. Well, later one evening that week, the woman was hanging out and talking with her mother. And of course, the conversation looped back to the typical, when are you going to get married speech, and insisting again that the daughter needs to find herself this good hunter that can provide for her.
Well, I met this 8-foot giant in the forest, and he told me he hunts like a motherfucker.
So the daughter kind of heard enough of it, and she's like, yeah, I know. I get it, Mom. I'm like, no, let's change the subject here. So after talking in circles with how this conversation typically went, the mother eventually kind of gave it a rest and decided to call it a night and just head to bed. Well, shortly after this, the daughter looks out the window and notices someone approaching their house in the dead of night.
The booja! Oh, sorry. No.
At first, she's a little freaked out, but as the figure grew closer, she recognized Sulkaloo as the figure from her dream or visit to the spirit world, however you want to interpret that. Only this time, he wasn't only present here in the physical waking world, but he was also carrying a dead deer over his shoulder. So she went to meet him outside, half in disbelief, and as he approached, he kind of noticed the look on her face and just started laughing again and said, "See, I told you, I am a great hunter." Well, woman couldn't really argue with that. He's bringing her a deer. That's a pretty big feast for the time. So with that, she invited Sulkaloo in to spend the night, but told him that he had to be out of the house before her mother woke up the next morning.
Classic love story.
Because while she found him to be charming and handsome, she knew that her mother would definitely be terrified by his physical appearance. Because Sulkaloo was said to be over 7 feet tall with 7 fingers on each hand, and reportedly, he was so hairy and so ugly that villagers could not bear to glance at his figure. Either way, you're starting to see a little bit of the crossover, or maybe at least references that could have been picked up in the Boojum story coming from this.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I also picture some of the bad guys from Elden Ring, because it's like there ain't a person that you fight in that game that doesn't have a couple extra digits. I don't know if you ever played it, but it's really weird.
Okay,
and it's
fair
very
enough.
punishing.
So technically, the name Sulkaloo translates to "he has them slanting" in Cherokee tradition, which is a reference to his slanted eyes. They were said to be able to help him like see far and wide when he's tracking animals in the hunt.
Yeah.
He was also known to be very powerful with the ability to jump from mountain ridge to mountain ridge. With these powerful jumps, said to have the ability to span the distance of multiple miles. Pretty significant, but makes for a good hunter, I suppose.
Part kangaroo. Well,
That'd be one hell of a kangaroo.
Yeah.
So he said that it was said that he could also control the wind, the rain, thunder, lightning. Actually, his arrows were said to be lightning bolts, and his voice was supposedly so powerful it had this booming roar capability to it. And he was also known to be able to drink entire streams dry with a single swallow. So these features kind of helped provide the Cherokee with like explanations for lightning, for thunder, for drought conditions, things like that. They're using these elements of the natural world and explaining them through a kind of, I would say supernatural tradition, but like we've talked about before, in Cherokee tradition, there's really no distinction between supernatural and the natural world. It's kind of all one and the same, as you see from the story. But you get the picture here. This isn't someone that she wanted her mom waking up to find that had spent the night, despite his, hunting skill. So while Sulkaloo did as the woman wished and was gone before daylight broke, the mother was surprised to wake up and find that the deer had been left behind by her daughter's mysterious suitor. And while she was pleased that, he'd left this meat for them, she was kind of a little suspicious that this suitor had not stuck around to introduce himself.
What is this mystery meat?
So, similar series of events take place later that evening. After the mother had gone to bed, Sulkaloo arrived again, but this time he brought 2 deer for the woman and her family.
I brought you more meat. Will you love me yet?
And he was invited in again, but again, he had to be gone before sunrise. Only this time he kind of waited and hid not too far from the area so he could kind of see the mother's reaction to the gifts that he had left for them. Now, at this point, it kind of seems like the mother was just looking for something to complain about. And she said, well, it would have been nice if he had left some wood to cook these deer with. And, of course, Sulkaloo, being hid out not far from the house. He heard this request, and showing a bit of a sense of humor, he did arrive later that night, but this time with entire uprooted trees, branches and all, and left them for the hard-to-please mother.
I thought he was going to be real snarky and have like a fully crafted canoe.
No, I think it's even snarkier. Dude just uproots a tree. It's like,
a damn
here.
tree. I'm not going to put effort into this.
So, of course, the mother wakes up the next morning and she finds all these trees that had been left. And she started complaining that he hadn't cut them up and properly stacked the wood for them. So at this point, Sulkalu's just starting to get a picture of what kind of character this mother is. And he's just getting annoyed. And he sees that she's seemingly impossible to please. So he collected all these trees that he left that night and just threw them back in the forest, leaving nothing for her.
You get nothing and you will like it.
Yeah, basically. But this didn't get in the way of the relationship with the daughter. And lots of time passed with this sort of odd relationship where he would only show up after dark, stay with her every night, seemingly kind of moved in with her, but he refused to let any of the family see him for fear of ridicule. Despite so much time passing that he actually married the woman and even had a child together. But the family was not allowed to see him still. And he's still just kind of sneaking in at night, sneaking out before the morning.
What a convenient relationship this man had.
So one day the mother gets fed up, and despite Sulkalu fulfilling the requirement of being a great hunter and a provider, she's still upset that she has not yet met her son-in-law at this point. And she said if they were going to continue this living arrangement, that she needed to at least be able to know what he looked like. So the next morning, the mother woke up early, extra early, so she could take a look inside her daughter's room before her daughter and her husband even woke up. And let's just say the mother's reaction, it wasn't great.
Jesus Christ!
As Mooney puts it in his collected version of this story, and there she saw a great giant with long slanting eyes, lying doubled up on the floor with his head against the rafters on one corner and his toes scraping the roof on the other corner. So, a little bigger than that original 7-foot description based off that.
Does she live in a 5-foot room?
No, I think part of this probably comes from James Mooney collecting this version of the story from multiple people. So maybe in someone that gave him the original description, 7 foot was listed on there. But then in the part where it's telling the actual story of him being discovered in the house, all of a sudden he's quite a giant.
Yeah. Anyway.
But yeah, anyway, after looking upon him, the mother, she ran away screaming, and naturally this woke up the couple and their child, who I guess also managed to fit in that room with him somehow. Might have been a little cramped quarters from what I'm gathering in this mental picture here.
Yeah.
But whether he was enraged or embarrassed or a mix of the two, he grabbed his wife and his child, packed their belongings, and fled to his home in the Balsam Mountains. Now, I'm not sure why they didn't resort to this sooner. Seems like it might have been a little bit more comfortable living arrangement. But either way, the couple took up residence with their child in his cave in an area known as the Tennessee Bald. Now, the cave is said to be located beneath an area that is known today as the Devil's Courthouse.
Like, you mean you had a cave this whole time?
Yeah, that's the part of the story that seems a little odd, but I guess the whole idea was that the woman not only wanted a husband to provide for her, she wasn't going to leave her mother and this helpless hunter, her brother, she had.
They needed mystery meat too.
Yeah, essentially. So I think it was one of those situations where maybe it wasn't explicitly laid out in the telling to the story, but I think that's kind of the reference there, that she wasn't going to leave her family completely helpless.
Sure.
At least until events like that happened.
Yeah, at least until, they found out about the cave.
Yeah. So yeah, this cave is said to be located beneath Devil's Courthouse, and the name Devil's Courthouse actually came from settlers that moved to that region. Before they sort of invented their own name, Judaculla, for this creature, they would simply refer to him as the Cherokee Devil. And some people believe that Devil's Courthouse was a sacred place where the spirits of the dead would pass on their journey to the afterlife. So the settlers, that whether they just knew the Cherokee tradition or whether they were seeing something just genuinely strange they couldn't explain up there, they attributed this area to be the area of the devil.
And you're talking about the area that's still called the Devil's Courthouse.
Devil's Courthouse, yeah. You could
Yeah.
actually visit Devil's Courthouse to this day. Well, as long as the parkway or that section of the parkway is open. I should probably preface that. But it is in Transylvania County, so it was easy to get to, like just past Brevard. You could access it from Balsam Grove, which is just outside of Rossman, as we were speaking about a couple weeks ago.
There you go. Dude, I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you, but a friend of the family, a guy named Larry Donahue, made a short horror film. No, it was a full-length feature horror film called The Devil's Courthouse.
Oh, yeah.
Years ago, and I did the opening song for it.
Oh, no way.
Yeah,
I saw that referenced in some of the stuff I was going across, like in popular media and stuff.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
In the whole intro sequence when they're driving up the parkway, that's my original song playing.
Sick. I'll have to see if I could find a copy of the movie then.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you've never been there or seen it yourself, it's definitely impressive. It's like this big dramatic rock formation on top of the Blue Ridge Parkway. I think it sits almost 6,000. I think it's like 5,700 some feet above sea level, but it's at mile marker 422.4 on the parkway if you're coming from anywhere else and just wanting to make a stop there for yourself. But what's really cool about it is it has this like 360-degree panoramic view where you could see 4 different states from the top of this kind of rock formation on top of the parkway.
That is like that section of the parkway looks, in my opinion, like very unique compared to the rest of the parkway. And I don't know why. Maybe it is because of these geological formations, but I've always found that area to look just a little different.
Yeah, it's a little more, I don't want to say open because, I mean, the parkway is pretty open itself, but from that vantage point when you get up there that high at that elevation and you're able to see literally 4 different states from where you're standing on top of this, it's pretty cool. Now, it's only about a half-mile hike from the parking lot if you want to go check it out, but just to be forewarned, it's a pretty damn steep half mile.
Yeah,
so.
But it is paved.
Yeah, it is paved. So that is a nice little bonus to it.
That's not a frequent thing on those trails on the parkway.
For sure. So just to give that fair warning for anyone wanting to go out there and check it out themselves. But I'll stop rambling and get back to the story.
We can ramble now. We gave ourselves license.
So anyways, the couple was living the happy life up at the courthouse. They even had another child. So Sulkaloo would go out hunting during the day, sometimes even on these overnight trips, leaving the wife to tend to the children. Also, does this sound like some maybe other hairy creature you might know going out hunting for gemstones, leaving?
Well, this whole thing has been sounding very, like you mentioned, this whole thing's starting to sound very pugilistic.
Right? So one day, the wife's brother, he managed to track Sulkaloo's footprints all the way up to the cave where he found his sister and her children, but Sulkaloo was out hunting away on one of these trips. Now, he tried to convince them to move back home because the mother missed her. And, I would imagine without that daily meat delivery they were getting with Sulkaloo there, they were probably missing the convenience to that. And I think they were trying to kind of do what they could to convince not only her and the family, but Sulkaloo just to move back into this little home that they were shacked up in for a little bit there. But as you can imagine, she was not convinced. But then fast forward about 4 years later in the story, the wife did eventually return to her family's house, and she let them know that Sulkaloo would be hunting in the woods near them if they did want to attempt meeting him again, but with the stipulation, you can't freak out this time.
Yeah.
Seems logical. And seems pretty big of them to offer them a second chance at that. So good intentions were had with this. They even arranged a time to meet. But the family, they didn't show up on time. And after waiting well past this arranged time in this hunting area, Sulkaloo decided to leave the area, but not before leaving enough deer hanging from the trees to feed the entire village as a nice gesture.
Nice.
So he's like, you guys let me down again. Here's some deer. I'm not trying to screw you guys over, but starting to piss me off a little bit is the vibe that I get from that.
Sure.
So the brother's still persisting in his attempts to meet his brother-in-law after messing up his first opportunity. And finally, Sulkaloo offered this proposal that if they fasted for 7 days at a house at the bottom of the mountain, he would agree to see them.
Secretly hoping they starve to death.
Well, there's a few different versions of this story. One involves him telling the whole village that they have to fast for 7 days. And in that version of the story, everyone, except for one single person, is able to do it, but one guy ends up coming in and messing it up for him. But there's actually a different version, and I think this version's is the ones that James Mooney tells, and I think it flows a little bit better with the way the story's kind of built so far. And in this version of the story, the fast was just specifically for the family, the mother and the brother, and it went well up until the 7th day. But there was like a bit of a misunderstanding about how exactly long they had to fast into that 7th day. And I think the brother assumed that I've made it to the 7th day, I could eat now. And unfortunately for him, he broke within the final hours of still counting down for those few hours left that he had to fast for in order to officially meet Sulcaloo.
And then Joe Rogan came out and was like, "You lost Fear Factor. You're off the island." Wait, I don't know what any of these shows are.
So at this point, Sulcaloo's he's done trying to meet them. He basically told them, "Leave me and my family alone." And he told them that no one from their tribe was to hunt into his territory, basically telling them they couldn't go past a certain area. And today, that area is known as Caney Fork, near Cullowhee. Now, this is where the abbreviated version of the story that I've always heard picks up. I told Caleb, like, going into this, I thought I knew everything I needed to about Judaculla and Judaculla Rock. And turns out this was the small fraction of what I knew. And I didn't know this whole prior backstory, which kind of leads to me potentially missing some information that provide a little context to the Boojum story.
Damn it, Burgess. I'd never heard any of that.
Yeah.
That you had just told. Like, I did not realize that there was a whole Boojum-esque lore to it. So
yeah, me either. Until, like I said, I'd always heard this abbreviated version, but until I dug into James Mooney's recollected accounts from Cherokee tradition, I had no idea either.
Yeah.
But like I said, this abbreviated version picks up here. And of course, members of the village, they didn't heed the warning that the brother had, and they continued to hunt into what was then known as forbidden land, according to the Sulcaloo's orders. So, watching from his home atop Devil's Courthouse, Sulcaloo saw members of the village hunting in the land that he had just forbidden them from doing. So, according to legend, he leapt from atop the mountain, landing on a soapstone boulder where the villagers were hunting, leaving his 7-finger handprint engraved in the rock. As you could imagine, this scared the shit out of them, and they ran away screaming. And Sulcaloo was pretty content. He was happy that he was able to scare the villagers away and hopefully send a message that I told you not to be hunting this land. You need to be able to heed my warning and be able to respect nature. But just to be sure that they got the message, he proceeded to carve additional markings into the soapstone boulder that he had imprinted with his hand. And these carvings are said to tell a story about the importance of respecting nature, or at least not hunting on his forbidden land.
I mean, it could have gone way more south than that.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to get got.
I mean, I think that there's certain versions of the story that allude to him.
Just massacre.
Yeah.
Nice.
But, like I said, I think that coming from a few different oral sources, there's a little bit of just pieces that don't fit completely neatly together in the story.
I kind of like this idea of like, oh, you're going to hunt on my land? Hold on. All right, I'm going to show you what's up. I'm going to carve this soapstone boulder right in front of you with my bare hand, you freaks.
Yeah. And of course, the villagers go back to the hunters go back to their village and they're like, you're not going to believe what just happened. We saw this freaking.
He was carving soapstone.
and the villagers don't really believe him. So they follow him back. And this is where they discover what is known today by us whiteys as Judaculla Rock.
So that's how it got there.
Yeah. And that, from all accounts and records, specifically James Mooney, is the gist of the legend of the Judaculla and Cherokee tradition.
Well, number one, way more interesting. I mean, not that the initial lore that I knew was uninteresting, but it is interesting to me that there is like so much more extra information in regards to the folklore of that. But I also kind of find it interesting that there was definitely some interplay between the storytelling of the Boojum and Judaculla there. So. Yeah,
so it's wild to me because if Peter, the Boojum story, inventing the Boojum story if we attribute that to him maybe hearing the legend of Sulcaloo or hearing some of these Cherokee traditions, and then him taking his own version of that and just completely whitewashing it and being like, no, I can't pronounce that. I'm going to call it the Boojum, and we're going to call it Hootenanny. And it's no, like if that's really what happened, then yeah, it does put an even more sour taste in your mouth about it. But like the other aspect you have to look at it is maybe Peter really had no idea about this, and this is just some weird reoccurring archetype that he happened to stumble upon in the same region, and their stories happen to be, I wouldn't say identical, but strikingly similar.
Can I bring something up?
Yeah.
I mean, this is a freaking paranormal podcast, so I think this is par for the course.
Yeah.
But do you not get a little bit of the vibe of the sense of the mountain man, the tall mountain man that comes down the mountain and tells us that we need to be one with nature? Do you not pick up, and obviously this is attributed with some Bigfoot, with some Boojum stuff, but does that not sound to you like in the event that Bigfoot exists, that maybe some of this stuff is coming from people's ancient encounters with Sasquatch?
100%. And I think that might be where a little bit of the crossover is, because maybe they did hear these stories of the Sulkaloo, and then they kind of wrote it off as Cherokee tradition. But maybe one day up at the Eagle's Nest Hotel, they saw some big hairy creature and they're like, what in the hell?
That's the thing about it too. Cause again, like, you know, we talk about folklore all the time, but when you talk about as much weird stuff as we do, you have to look at these stories and say to yourself, well, what exactly could they be pulling from in reality for these things?
Yeah.
Because again, we don't know if Bigfoot exists. There's a lot of reasons that I think it could. There's a lot of reasons that I think it couldn't. But there are a shit ton of stories of, and I kind of tend to think that maybe if Bigfoot doesn't exist, that maybe it did at one point, because there's just too many stories of people talking about, you know, I believe that the Cherokee themselves had referred to them as the woolly ones.
Mm-hmm.
Micah had talked about that when he was on the podcast talking about the existence of Sasquatch. So I can't hear stories about a 7 foot tall, ugly man
covered in hair.
Yes.
Yeah. Hearing that description straight from Cherokee tradition, I mean, not only sounds exactly like the Boojum, it sounds exactly like these hundreds of other Sasquatch encounters you hear about across not even just the country, across the world.
Exactly. And, you know, when we talk about our episode about like the Bigfoot sightings in Madison County and all the people that talked about him in recent years being out there, I mean, dude, I don't know. It's all I will say is it's a very interesting correlation between the description of Judaculla, the Boojum, and Bigfoot. Yeah,
no joke. So again, maybe I jumped the gun early on as this young wee little podcaster on my 5th episode of ever doing it. And,
hey, you're good, dude. We all make mistakes. But the good news is you figured it out later, and now you're telling other people about it.
Yeah. I'm not ashamed to admit my mistakes. If I find it, I'm going to tell you about it and be like, hey, I fucked this up. This is what actually happened.
Yeah, but the good news is we didn't get a single email telling you that you fucked up. So
I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, I thought I knew a good bit about the Judaculla legend. I didn't know any of this until really this week. So I really don't know how many people have drawn that direct connection between the two.
Yeah. But, you know, what we try to do here at the podcast is do the best damn research we can. That doesn't mean everything that we're going to tell you is going to be 100% correct.
I researched the Boojum pretty thoroughly. Little did I know I should have been researching the Judaculla and cross-reference with that. But hey, you know, for the time being.
I still think our Boojum episode is funny as shit.
I still think it's a great episode. And quite honestly, I don't think we were that far off track. I just think we missed where the influence of the story might have come from.
Yeah, give yourself a break.
Oh, I'm apologizing to Mr. Boojum and leaving it at that.
There you go.
Or the Boojum descendants that exist in Haywood County today.
Jeremy Boojum, if you're listening, we're very sorry.
So, Cherokee tradition really holds this spot of the Judaculla Rock sacred. The eastern band of the Cherokee Indians that exist here in North Carolina and the 2 Cherokee tribes in Oklahoma continue to regard this boulder as spiritually significant. So this is not only just part of a legend in their lore, this is something that they really do have a spiritual connection to. And again, in the story, the Sulkaloo, the Judaculla, he's almost seen as if not a god, almost like a demigod type figure in some way.
Yeah.
Using him to explain, you know, natural occurrences, stuff like that. Like you almost get a bit of that Zeus crossover with the lightning bolts.
I almost brought that up. I mean, that is so many cultures like that explanation of thunder, wind, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, I mentioned the white settlers eventually came up with their own name for this legendary creature, the Judaculla, which some believe was influenced by the name of Cullowhee itself, like Judaculla, Cullowhee. It was just kind of a natural way to kind of blend in some of the dialects and, their attempt at trying to maybe come up with a name that they could pronounce or just their own anglicized version of it.
Yeah, that tracks.
So you can still visit this legendary rock today, which is known as Judaculla Rock, right outside of Cullowhee. So during my days at Western, my friends and I would hang out this place called East LaPorte Park. And, it's just like, not a lot going on there in Cullowhee. So it's a cool place to hang out by the river and grill and play basketball and whatnot. Well, the road that Judaculla Rock is located on is basically directly across from the park. So I've been there more than a handful of times with friends, and I've got to say, it might be this one of the strangest mysteries to this day in Western North Carolina, and hell, maybe even bigger scope than that.
Sure, man.
I mean, you look at places that have truly, left unexplained to this day. No one can still decipher or read the actual message left on this rock.
I mean, that's the whole thing about it. And I know for a fact that it's been compared to tons of other glyphs from, I don't know. I haven't researched Judaculla Rock as far as a lot of other people have. Do you happen to know right offhand, like when they think the carvings were made in it?
Yeah, there's a lot of mixed opinion on that.
Right.
So keep in mind, this thing is it's 20 by 10 feet wide. And they say it has over 1,500 different unique designs carved into it. So big surface level, but every bit of that thing is filled up with some type of unique carving.
And there's a lot of different theories as to what it potentially could be. People think that maybe it's like an artistic interpretation of stories of maybe the deities that they were talking about back in the day. I have heard it theorized that they thought that it was an early depiction of a theoretical idea of cellular structure.
Yeah, I know exactly where you heard that one, and I will get to that very, very shortly.
I don't know about that, but
I actually found some commentary back on that theory too. So I've got a decent amount, not I want to say a decent amount, but I tried to collect as many theories on this as I could that seemed plausible in some way. But trying to go back to pinpointing when this thing was actually carved, I think a lot of people say potentially being over 2,000 years old is a pretty safe starting point for that. And I think that's fairly conservative on that end, because there's other kind of accounts on there that have listed some different dates, because 2000 still, that's a significant chunk of time.
Sure.
It's definitely ancient, but there's other people that feel it could go back even further than that. And with that being said, apparently there were two other engraved rocks that were said to be in the same area. Now, one unfortunately was lost in some sort of mining accident around the area. Seems odd, especially if it was a giant boulder like that.
That shit was 100% ganked.
Yeah, there's references to Smithsonian representatives being out and checking out the area. So
big surprise. Yeah, the only reason they couldn't take Judaculla Rock is because they didn't. Yeah, they couldn't fit it in the back of their fucking SUV.
So that rock is said to be lost, but apparently there's one that's said to still be out there, potentially buried or covered in some sort of overgrowth. Don't know exactly if that's a bit of urban legend or a bit of, I
wouldn't be surprised.
It very well could be. I mean, you go back into there, because right behind Judaculla Rock, where it is, where the kind of platform is, you start to go into the woods from there. So, who knows what kind of overgrowth could cover anything out there.
Dude, there could be stuff all throughout those woods.
Yeah, we talked about just the Sapphire Valley episode where they uncovered that mysterious well that they attributed to Cherokee tradition out in that area too. So yeah, who knows? I've always kind of wondered why that area has never been fully excavated for as rich as the potential is.
Yeah, I would assume just because I don't know how far the private property goes into the woods there.
Yeah, that's a very valid point, and probably the actual reason. But there have been limited digs, and archaeologists have found like different tools, ancient tools out in the area. They've even speculated that the soapstone rock could have been used to engrave these soapstone bowls that the Cherokee were known for making. And because of that association with these soapstone bowls they were making and them allegedly using these huge boulders to kind of jointly carve these out, they kind of tried to date the rocks similarly to how they dated some of these soapstone bowls.
Yeah.
So with some of these theories, they date the potential of Judaculla Rock's carving back to 3000 or 2000 BC.
Damn.
So that's insanely old.
Yeah, that is wild, dude. Holy shit.
Yeah. So it's not just like this historic artifact. It is literally a living mystery to this day. Whether you believe like the ancient rituals, whether you believe in Cherokee giants or whatever you want to believe about it, it is mysterious, supernatural, whatever you want to call it. It is just a completely anomalous location landmark here in Western North Carolina.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I think that they've tried to do things where they were referencing some of the images that are carved on this rock and trying to, like, see if it made any sense with any other particular carvings or any of the stuff in the area, and nothing looks even like remotely close to like a known early language or cave drawing or anything like that.
Exactly, and that's what like makes the mystery persist how it is to this day, because no one's been able to figure out how to read it. But
I have a theory on that, but we can get into that later on.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't stop people from having their own theories.
Sure.
Like you said. And quite honestly, I'm kind of shocked that Ancient Aliens hasn't come out here, done an episode on this thing yet.
Dude, yeah, what the hell?
Yeah, like I checked to see, it's like, this has to be on some like segment of a show. No.
It's right up their alley.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you could totally see how they would like frame that around. There's no way human beings made this.
Exactly. Like, well, yeah, like maybe Micah needs to hit up his buddy Giorgio and get him out to the mountains.
Dude, he probably could.
But yeah, I mean, it's that big of a mystery. So getting to some of these theories, some historians believe that the etchings in the rock are some sort of this map or telling of a story between the Cherokee and the Creek tribes that happened in 1775. But archaeologists and geologists definitely refute this theory because, well, Cherokee, first of all, weren't known for etching their history into stone or rock. This isn't part of their tradition that existed anywhere else in this land.
Yeah.
Also, the markings aren't in any language that's known or recognizable to the Cherokee. This isn't part of their tradition. We already covered the tradition that they have tied to this landmark, and that is the story of the Sulkaloo. It was something that they found. It's not something that they inscribed themselves. So if it was something that truly did belong to the Cherokee, there would be at least some, you would think, some sort of reference back to similar markings, similar carvings that might have existed somewhere across the land of Western North Carolina. But
right.
haven't ran into that or come across that. There's some archaeologists that even believe that the Judaculla Rock was a remnant of this prehistoric tribe who lived here at the end of the Ice Age, which, yeah, could be very plausible.
Sure.
So either way, the landmark has been viewed as extremely significant for years, even outside of Cherokee tradition. I've actually found this old letter in archives from February 27th of 1935, where a gentleman named H.C. Wilburn was writing to Arlen Weaver, who worked with the Great Smoky Mountains National Park Service, I guess when they were kind of in the process of just opening up the park and maybe looking to expand some of the land. But there is a section of that letter where he writes to Mr. Weaver with the Park Service saying, "There is one other matter I wish to talk to you about. Of course, you know about Judaculla Rock over in Jackson County. We have been hearing about it ever since I came here, but I have never seen it. Yesterday, I was over at Cullowhee College, which is now WCU, talking to Dean Byard and Mr. Amos, both members of the museum committee. They expressed great concern about the preservation of the Judaculla Rock. If this rock is to be lost, the park does not include it, and some of us feel the preservation and care of the area surrounding it can only be assured by working with the local people. This would preserve the view, interest, and value of the place. A special museum committee was appointed by Mr. Byard to prepare a brief on Judaculla Rock and geological features. The state and several from Canada visited the rock last year. A number of scientists were invited. Some from the Smithsonian were invited to attend the ceremony as well." The rock is soapstone and is being destroyed by people walking on it. Of course, the right thing to do would be an archaeological survey on the entire area. Thank you, and with very kind personal regards, I am yours very truly, H.C. Wilburn.
I am yours.
Very truly.
I am yours. Now pull that goddamn rock out of the mud.
So you can see like preservation efforts for this thing have been going on for a while now. This is 1935, and they're talking about like, hey, people are walking all over this damn historical artifact, and it's gonna degrade and won't be around. So if it wasn't for people making efforts like this back in 1935, the soapstone very well could have eroded away without any preservation efforts, and we wouldn't have anything to visit.
Well, they have done shit to it like since I was going out there.
Yeah. I read somewhere that there's, I don't know how factual this is because I haven't been there in probably 10 years or something.
Same. It's been it's been like 20 years.
Okay, fair enough. I saw some post, maybe it was on Reddit, where someone said they built some sort of like awning to cover it from weather damage.
That's what I had heard, and that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because I've never seen that.
Yeah, me either.
When I was out there, dude, they had like a little...
It's like a horseshoe viewing platform.
Exactly. Yeah, they had a little tiny thing around the rock, but at that point, it was still sinking into the mud.
Yeah, for sure. So today, the rock itself is owned by Jackson County. It was donated to them in 1959 by the Parker family, who happens to be the family that owns the property where the rock is located on. And they've been very gracious caretakers of the rock and the surrounding lands. They still do a lot of, your traditional upkeep, lawn work, making sure that everything's mowed, everything's accessible there, and, just general cleanup of the place. Because I think that, you get people that don't always heed Sulakalu's warning of respecting nature. And, they litter, they leave some junk. And
dumb fucks.
Yeah, exactly. And the Parker family, they go out and clean it up without really asking. And I know it's Jackson County's responsibility, but they kind of take pride in this area.
It's amazing that they just allow people to come up there and still see it.
Yeah, because you really are driving into a dead-end road that ends with someone's driveway, and off to the right is the Judaculla Rock.
Yeah. So to the Parker family, thank you so much for allowing people to come up there and witness something truly amazing and truly mysterious.
Yeah.
That is so cool of them. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Because it really is a historically significant landmark.
And just weird as shit.
Yeah, for sure.
What the... Dude, for all we know, that is an alien meteorite that landed out there.
I mean, for all we know, yeah, you're not wrong.
I don't think that's what it is.
No, but for all we know, it might be.
Seriously.
So there have been assessments done, I guess kind of not too far back, like around like 2007. And they found that the rock, nearly one half of the rock had been covered in sediment since like the 1920s. And really around like the 1960s, they kind of dug down farther to see where a good chunk of this rock really was buried. So again, it's one of those things where you don't really know how deep some of this stuff goes. And like I said, you don't have the full excavation of the area, probably with respect to the Parker family and their land.
Right.
But you never know what else could be buried but beneath all this if a lot of the rock really wasn't visible until the 1960s.
It's so funny because like you think about what if they did do that and there were like 3 other Judaculla rocks right there.
I mean, it kind of sounds like that might be the probability.
Yeah. We may never know. I mean, but the interesting thing though, technologically, is that we're able to use that ground penetrating radar situation.
Yeah, I thought about that when I was.
I mean, how many people have they done that at all?
I have no idea. I really don't. There have been a lot of people that have done dissertations on this. There's been a lot of academic studies that kind of combine different disciplines, obviously from like the historical folklore side with disciplines from the geological archaeology side. And again, still a big mystery, still a big question mark. No one really has answers for a lot of this, but theories are out there. The National Park Service actually put their stamp of approval on one theory, and they were actually the ones that did eventually get Judaculla Rock added to the National Register of Historic Places in 2013. So good on them. That definitely was long overdue. Just thinking of my whole time at Western, this was never on the National Registry, which seems insane. Like
right.
This is, if I was to think of a top 5 in Western North Carolina specifically, this has to be number 1.
Yeah.
So whatever, wild, but is what it is. So they believe that this rock was basically some sort of like 3-dimensional map supposed to lay out the surrounding terrain and able to help guide ancient people from maybe encampment to encampment, or give them directions on how to cross some of this wooded territory where you're going through creeks, you're going through mountainous ridges. And they believe that somehow these multiple trails and everything like that were correlated to the markings on the rock, and they kind of appeared to correspond to some of these local landmarks like the Devil's Courthouse or the Tennessee Bald. And they just kind of went with that. Simple theory explanation. It was a map.
All right.
It seems, like a pretty non-controversial theory for the National Park Service to endorse. Don't know how creative it is, but
could be.
There. It could be.
Can't say.
For another theory, one that you alluded to, you go over to JudacullaRock.com. There's another theory from our pal Joshua P. Warren.
Yep.
And I guess this theory came from 2002, according to the website. So your Judaculla experience with Josh was a little after that, right? So he'd already done a little bit of initial scouting in the area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
that's where my mission spawned. That landed me in the Lemur team, the League of Energy Materialization and Unexplained Phenomena Research with a silent P. That's how I got initiated into the Lemur team, because Josh had been out there looking at Judaculla Rock for the longest time. Do you mind? I know we talked about this on the Thomas Divide episode a little bit, but he mentioned to me, he's like, I walked about 14 paces out from Judaculla Rock and I looked on the ground and there's a rock with an arrow pointed. I looked up where the rock was pointed, where the arrow was pointed, and there seems to be some kind of cave on the mountain up there. He says, if you can drive out there and try to get up that mountain and see if you can even get just a better look at it and tell me whether you think that is actually a cave or not, or at least worth like going out there to, he's like, I'll let you in the Lemur team. And I did that very thing. And I got out there and I climbed that mountain about as high as I could. I got a little bit better view of it. I couldn't tell exactly what was going on, but that specific thing spawned an entire expedition where we had, the ground team and then the other team, which were the hikers, which were myself, Brian Irish, Micah, my brother, and we went all along the ridgeline. We were tracking it using GPS and using walkie-talkies for Warren to be like, okay, we've got, we're signaling back flashing mirrors to show where we are. And we got to the overhang, and unfortunately, it was just overhang. It wasn't like a full-blown cave. We were hoping that it would be this, deep receded cave full of artifacts, and
right.
For all we knew, the skeleton of Judaculla, but didn't turn out to be that.
Picture the Parker family sitting on their porch like, look at these dumbasses climbing the mountain. Yeah. So anyways, jumping back to the site that Warren put together, Warren describes the area, and he says that ghostly noises are common at this site, especially considering it's only a few hundred feet from an old graveyard, which I actually didn't know.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either.
Yeah, so he says there are even reports of eerie illuminations around the stone and UFOs appearing in the clearing above it. Had no idea about that either, but I've ran into about 5 different accounts that said the same thing.
Damn.
So there must be something to it, or they're all just quoting Warren, one of the two.
Well, that or it's another episode, UFOs over Judaculla.
Yeah, right. Anyways, he kind of concludes, all in all, it's widely known as a paranormal hotspot. The stone sits at a base of a mountain, and a very large vein of copper runs down under the site. The entire mountain is filled with a variety of metals and minerals. The layout can create detectable electromagnetic anomalies around the rock and may have inspired ancients to consider the area sacred. Kind of interesting. I don't know if you guys went out with meters detecting any of the stuff while you were out there, but I imagine it's something that's kind of a ground base level thing to cover wherever you guys were going.
We didn't really go anywhere without taking any of that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
We always had Geiger counters and shit on us.
Do you remember there being any odd transient fields going through that area, or was that something that didn't really spike when you were out there?
I never personally measured anything, and I don't know if there was any report that was put together after the expedition that we all went on to go look for the cave, because I don't know if we were really measuring that sort of stuff in that particular focus. But I'll have to ask Josh. It'd be interesting to see if there was.
Yeah. He goes on to say that the visible relic is probably the tip of a vast iceberg, kind of alluding to what we were saying before. He says, considering the site has never been excavated, there's no telling what other ancient markings and artifacts may lie a short distance below the surrounding earth. So Warren made a connection to experiments that he had conducted as a child, and he says the surface of the rock reminded him of a random soup of microorganisms. He said when he was a kid, he would go out to the creek, examining, like getting samples of drops of local creek water and put it under this cheap microscope. And he says that the resemblance to some of these markings on the rock were so uncanny to what he would see with some of these microorganisms that he wondered whether or not these ancient people who made the markings might have been depicting the same thing. Only issue is microscopes weren't invented till a lot later after this rock was carved.
Sure.
So this is where it goes into. In August of 2002, the Lemur team did some sort of initial investigation of Judaculla Rock. And at the time, Warren's theory regarding Judaculla's possible connection to microbiology was solidified. Upon comparing these markings to microscopic forms, possible relationship quickly becomes undeniable, according to Josh. So he says, was a microscope actually invented thousands of years earlier, perhaps by a civilization long forgotten? Perhaps ancient astronauts left a sign for us that could only be understood once life on this planet evolved far enough to develop suitable technology. Are the marks on Judaculla Rock a clear sign that we have been visited in the distant past? The artist could have not produced conventional images, trees, bears, the moon, etc., or could have produced conventional images such as those. However, normal figures such as those were not found. Instead, they did produce pictograms of microscopic life, the most simple and basic forms of life found throughout the entire universe. And on this website, you can still go to, judacullarock.com, he goes on to show, they're pretty convincing comparisons between markings on the rock and at least like 7 different microorganisms. So granted, there's 1,500 markings, and, he found a handful of comparisons, which is not nothing at the very least.
Yeah.
He also alluded to the abundance of mica in the region, not the Don, but mica, the rock, being used as a potential natural microscopic slide to be able to analyze these microorganisms. So pretty interesting theory. I know you kind of alluded to that one being something that you had your own thoughts on.
Well, I just have my own thoughts about what the rock could be in general. And I might have talked about this before, but when I was in the 6th grade, I was in a classroom that I was not really stoked to be in that class.
Uh-huh.
And there was this guy named Bob Nolan. He was a really cool dude. He was a badass musician, and he taught a guitar class at the school.
Yeah.
And I just remember him popping in, and he just looks at the teacher. He goes, Can I just take him? And he just points at me. He's like, you're coming with me. And he was like, yeah, you don't want to do that. We're going to guitar class. Because he knew my brother, he knew that we did the musical stuff. So he's like, you're going to come to guitar class. Bob was awesome. And he, fostered so many kick-ass young musicians in the Inca high school, system. And I was sitting there in his class one time, and we'd play music, but he said to me one thing that I found very profound one day. He's like, do you know who the first human beings were? I was like, I don't know. Who? And he goes, think about it, man. The first humans, there was a difference between the humans and the cavemen. But the first humans were artists, because they were the ones that, for no other reason than just to make something pretty, they took their club that they used to beat the crap out of animals and eat them, and they just started carving little designs on them. And they just started carving little interesting pictographs on these things just for the sake of making it look pretty or cool.
And you interpret the rock as just that, a work of art?
I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But what I will throw out there as a theory is it could just be an early artistic interpretation of somebody back then that had a really big imagination. Maybe they were inspired by the stars at night. that were not completely eaten alive
Yeah.
by the light pollution.
Yeah, very
Maybe they
valid.
were looking at the constellations and they were drawing together pictures and putting together stories in their mind of what these gods like Judaculla could have been, and they were making a comic book. They were telling a story on that rock of something that was going on in their own mythology.
Yeah, I like that interpretation. That's not a common one that you see or hear out there.
I
in the
hadn't
theories.
heard that theory.
Yeah, it's not one that I came across.
I don't know shit about this stuff. I always say that. But as somebody that likes to make up stories and draw shit for fun, why not?
Yeah. No, I like that. And hey, we don't get any closer to learning the truth without theories, because you have to put things out there. This is the scientific method for that matter.
Yeah.
So putting something out there and finding ways to disprove it, that's basically how that works. So
well, here's the other thing about it though too, is like, why do we need to ascribe such meaning to everything?
yeah.
Why does it need to be a map?
True.
Because dude, I remember when I was a kid, I would get out there with a stick and just draw in the mud.
Doodle. Yeah.
For fun.
Yeah.
They probably found that they could etch away on the soapstone because it's very easy to etch stuff, and they're like, oh hell, I'm gonna keep going with this. This is fun.
Yeah, it very well could be. I guess the only big hole in that is like, why is it this one location that we found that in?
Maybe that's just where they were.
Yeah.
When they found
Yeah.
that big piece of
The only prehistoric artist.
Well, think about it. What if they were like, dude, this is a perfect canvas.
Yeah.
I just found this and
Yeah.
it just works.
Yeah.
I honestly, again, I know that I'm going like deep into this, but that to me screams artist more than anything.
Yeah.
I just found this thing that I think could work for this thing I'm compelled to do.
Yeah.
As
no.
weird as it is.
That checks out. It's interesting because, like I said, without theories like that, we wouldn't have possibilities to explore. And, I don't want to write off anything that Warren said either. There was actually a WCU professor that kind of commented on Warren's theory on this. It was a guy named Thomas Martin. He was an associate professor of aquatic ecology and head of the biology department there at WCU. And he says that there is some scientific plausibility to Warren's speculation. He says that the small droplets of water can act as rudimentary microscopes, and that simple rock crystal lenses found in modern day Iraq have been dated to like 700 BC. So like it's not out of the question when you consider the kind of earliest interpretations on the timeline that something like that could have happened. So yeah, he could just kind of goes on to say it's possible that the creators of the Judaculla Rock used some type of like natural ancient microscope to observe organisms. And, he says there's absolutely no reason to think that Native Americans wouldn't have been aware of that phenomenon.
Dude, I got another theory on how that could be a thing.
What's that?
The mineral mica.
Yeah.
Very thin.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
flaky. Yeah. So he finds some in the creek there, puts it up to the sun.
Oh.
Puts it right up to his eyes. 2 pieces of mica with some water in between it. Puts it right up to their eye.
And that's a way to...
Looking at the sun through it. I mean, you might be able to see some shit through that.
And maybe that's what Warren's kind of alluding to with some of that mica theory.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe so. But I think Martin kind of stopped short of giving his endorsement other than saying, and that's a scientific plausibility. But he kind of goes on to say, and this is something you probably resonate more with, that given the many possible reasons to carve a soapstone, he says, in my opinion, the early microbiologists wishing to document their observations probably isn't the first answer that he's going to naturally draw.
Right. Wait, was Warren's theory exactly what I just said about the mica stuff?
I don't know if he goes into the exact description that you did,
Okay.
but he alluded to mica being used to somehow handle the microorganisms as a bit of like a natural slide, if you will.
Okay. Maybe I'm just remembering shit he and I talked about back in the day. I don't even know.
Maybe so.
But again, it doesn't seem completely impossible, but hey, easy enough to try it out.
Yeah. There's even some members of the EBCI, the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, that have commented on Warren's theory, saying that it's not something that they would immediately discount, but it still remains conjecture. So they're not going to sit here, especially with something that's so significant to their culture and tradition. They're not going to take this white guy's theory on it and be like, oh yes, clearly, this is what it is.
Sure.
They instead say that images of the Judaculla Rock are the closest connection we have to ancient human mind and are representative of the way these people saw the world. There are things about it that are carried in the oral tradition that are not shared with other people. So, with that being said, I think there's a little bit more to the mystery that might be still kept under wraps within proper Cherokee tradition, as it should be. That they might not be letting all the secrets out of the bag. He kind of goes on to say, it's like any religion, you don't learn the mysteries of a religion from the outside.
Right. Good for them.
That kind of checks out. So interesting to kind of hear not only the kind of academic interpretation on that theory, but also the very historic cultural folklore tradition from the Cherokee side. But even more recently than Warren's theory, I came across a book from a local Cherokee man named David Webb, who is titled Judaculla Speaks. And according to the intro of this book, he says that as a historically significant cultural property, Judaculla Speaks is a story of a mythical legend left in petroglyphs on a boulder located in the mountains of western North Carolina near Cullowhee. They were inscribed during a time when the giants and the little people lived together in harmony, a time when the mountains were as old as dirt and the rocks held the stories of the secrets of the ancients. He kind of goes on to allude that, growing up in Cherokee households, he would hear these stories from his family members, and it almost makes me wonder if some of these stories that he heard and his interpretation, their interpretations that he's sharing through this book, might be some of these, more mysterious ways that the Cherokee wanted to leave some of this under wraps, knowing that this is coming directly from tribe members themselves, people of the Cherokee tradition.
Right.
But the following story brings to light the oral history of an earlier people predating the Cherokee known as the Anakanati, which sounds a lot like
Anunnaki.
Yeah, exactly. These were said to be the children of the first chief. This previously told story is written in the soapstone of Judaculla Rock to be revealed at a time such as this. It was written during a time when magic, alchemy were given as a foundation to humankind for transformation and a testimony of light. And he basically goes on to kind of say that this story that he speaks of is shared on this rock in what he calls a story of the Garden of Life. And with this Garden of Life, they hear the truth, they plant the seed, and he goes on to allude to this wheel that is supposedly in some of the inscriptions or carvings on the rock, and it tells a story of the Garden of Life and how water came from the heavens from the Pleiades. Haven't heard that before in bits of ufology. That's fairly common. So it's kind of interesting to see how this book goes on to describe how these markings on the rock correlate with the story of the wheel that allegedly comes from the Pleiadians. And it's pretty wild that even a direct Cherokee interpretation can land back in the realm of the UFO subject. So I think that's pretty wild. I got to check out the book and flip through it. And, it tells a pretty deep story that he learned from his own upbringings in Cherokee households that kind of alludes to this rock telling a story that came from the stars, came from somewhere else. We'll allude to it that way.
Sure, which could be interpreted as a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Comets.
Yeah, for sure. So, either way, it's still wild that you have this interpretation. And he goes on very much like Warren. There's certain pictures of the rock, certain carvings that he will explain their meaning in the story of the wheel. And it's pretty interesting. Again, still kind of the jury's out on what the actual meanings of this rock are. But even with it still being a mystery, like you just can't deny the cultural impact of not only the rock, but Judaculla and Sulkaloo itself and these legends. And I didn't realize just how far-reaching these went, even outside of Western North Carolina. So I mentioned when I was at WCU, I lived in a dorm with my friends Brian and Josh, and it was just known as Central at the time. But in somewhat recent years, they've renamed the dorm Judaculla Hall, which is a way better name.
Now you're bummed you weren't there at the time.
I lived in Judaculla Hall before it was Judaculla Hall, so before
it was cool.
I could be a hipster on that. And also, are you familiar with this show? It's called The Secret Saturdays. I think it's like a Cartoon Network show. I think from what I could tell, it's by like the creators of Ben 10 and some of those other animated ones.
No, I don't think so.
So it's some sort of like superhero / cryptid show from what I could tell. And there's a character named Doc Saturday, who's like one of the main characters in it. And he has this big scar across his face. And one of the episodes, he tells a story on how he got this scar. And it was from a battle he had with the giant Sulkaloo. And this is like a national children's animated show. I don't think it's still on the air, but I mean, it seemed to be pretty big. It was on Cartoon Network. So for that reference to reach levels like that, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the giant archetype is kind of all over the place, but it's really interesting when I think about now hearing that. Makes me think of a character in Adventure Time where I'm like, damn, I think he's got more than 5 fingers and he's like really big.
Huh.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to circle back to that.
I think his name in the show is Billy.
Huh.
But if you haven't seen Adventure Time, that's a badass show.
Yeah. So even more so than that, did you ever play World of Warcraft?
Oh, hell yeah. I'm more of a Final Fantasy 14 guy, as you know, but I've played my very fair share of World of Warcraft.
Well, apparently, there's a massive white gorilla in the zone known as Northern Stranglethorn, if you're familiar with that part of the map.
Not really.
Yeah, me either. I guess he's somewhat referred to in the as the Earth Spirit in some of the quests, but as you approach him, the name of this massive white gorilla is Sulkaloo.
Interesting.
In World of Warcraft.
I ran into a Gigantopithecus in Final Fantasy 14, like named that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Nice little reference there.
I can't remember the exact references, but in a particular area of the game, there were multiple references to cryptids.
But I just think it's wild that something that seems, fairly specific to Western North Carolina is making appearances in World of Warcraft and Cartoon Network shows and stuff like that.
It just shows how deep these developers, like the lore creators, they will go down these rabbit holes. Good for them for incorporating it.
Yeah, for sure.
It's obviously, it's not impossible to find these things, but they are relatively secluded into, regional things like that. So good for them for putting that in there.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing is pretty strange and borderline paranormal itself in that. But, outside of Warren's kind of references to it being a UFO hotspot and maybe some of these ghostly things that have been alluded to it, I've never had any personal experiences there. I think when I was in school, I'd chalk it up to urban legend, but you'd always hear about like fraternities going there to have like initiation rituals and shit like that. But I don't see that as a likely possibility. Parker family would just be sitting there like, what the hell are you kids doing?
You know what's weird though? When I think about it, I had an initiation ritual out there.
When you put it, you were the cause of all these legends, I heard.
Maybe I was.
But yeah, I mean, outside of that, I've never had anything strange, paranormal happen to me while I was there. But apparently there are some stories tied to it. And I guess there's some even weird stories tied to Devil's Courthouse too.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. I guess the occurrences that are most common up at Devil's Courthouse, according to this site, and I thought this was really odd because I found this description of the Devil's Courthouse hauntings on a site called Gatlinburg Haunts.
Ooh.
But this is nowhere near Gatlinburg.
But we need to do that.
Yeah, I mean, why not? It is in the mountains, very much so.
Dude, I bet there's all kind of weird shit.
I'll have to explore more of this website after this. But for some reason, it has this one location that's in Transylvania County on it. So, but thanks to them, I wouldn't have known some of these stories here. They say one of the most commonly reported phenomenon from the Devil's Courthouse is the appearance of mysterious lights, often described as glowing orbs or flickering flames. These lights have been seen moving across the landscape, hovering above the ground, or darting in and out of the rock formations. Some believe these lights are spirits who have lost their lives in the area, while others think they could be a natural yet unidentified phenomenon. So definitely seems a little bit Brown Mountain lighty. But what really, really piques my interest on this is Devil's Courthouse is located right above Rosman.
Oh, okay.
Where Kyle's been seeing some pretty strikingly similar orb phenomena going on. So, don't know if I could connect the two definitively, but it's an interesting correlation nonetheless.
After our conversation with Kyle, where we were getting into this idea that if there is some sort of piezoelectric, I don't know if it's piezo or piezoelectric, but whatever it's pronounced as, effect that's going on with the minerals in the mountains that just, I don't know, that helps to generate this shit. It would seem likely at this point with all of the reports of that stuff.
Yeah. And you talk about like this being right around that Balsam Grove area, not far from the Horseshoe Rock that he even mentioned.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a little more crossover than I initially thought on that. But I guess there's other reports of some strange stuff going on. Visitors frequently report sudden or like drastic drops in temperature, even on warm days. They're up on the rock and they just notice a like 20 plus degree difference in the temperature. And these cold spots are often accompanied by this overwhelming sense of dread or unease. I guess paranormal researchers have been up to kind of investigate this, and they suggest that these temperature anomalies could be indicative of some sort of spirit activity, as it's believed ghosts can draw energy from surrounding environment, causing localized temperature changes. With that, there's also been stories of disembodied voices, disembodied footsteps, and other strange sounds coming from Devil's Courthouse itself. These include the eerie echo of drumming, which I know hits home for you a little bit on that one.
Dear God.
And yeah, just other weird auditory phenomena, and some hikers and campers have even reported seeing those damn shadow figures moving among the tree lines and standing at the edge of the cliffs.
Get out of my campsite, Hat Man. But I mean, the elevation is still pretty high where they're feeling these fluctuations in temperature, right?
Yeah. So it could be,
There are dynamic atmospheric
Yeah.
things that happen
Yeah.
where the temperature will change at the drop of a hat. All the time. So again, I think a decent amount of that can be attributed to that. But then again, I'm not the one experiencing this shit, so I don't know.
Yeah. To me, like, I just wanted to read you the full section that old Gatlinburg Haunts provided us, but it's really that orb phenomenon that really kind of piqued my interest on that. But with that said, I think that's about everything within my scope of research this time that I'm aware of have to provide for you on the Judaculla topic.
Well, brother, I think you have more than redeemed yourself of one fact out of an hour's worth of information that you put together on the Boojum episode. And now this wonderful representation of a topic that I love Judaculla Rock in general, because again, here's this thing. We still don't know what the hell is going on with it. I would think at least by now, after looking into Judaculla Rock since the day I was probably like 16 or 17 years old when I really started looking into that. And here we are today, and we still don't really know maybe anything.
Yeah, I don't know if we're any closer than we were, 20 some years ago.
But, we've mentioned it so many times. There's a reason that we decided to do a podcast about this particular area, because you have weird shit like Judaculla Rock just sitting over there in Colby.
Yeah.
What the fuck is that?
Yeah. Come on, ancient aliens, get out here.
Yeah. It's just bizarre to me that this is still where we're at with it, but in the same vein, completely inspiring that there are still mysteries and cool things out there like that. Well, Brother Austin, incredible work as always on this stuff. The lore of Judaculla, I know more about that now than I did before, and happy about it. Well, we're going to get into a bunch more minor details and weirdness on our after show, the midnight broadcast that we're going to be doing directly after this. And if you want access to the midnight broadcast, along with a completely ad-free version of our regular show, Ghosts in the Mountains, well, all you got to do is become a paid Patreon subscriber, and you will be able to have access to that and a bunch of other stuff that Austin and I put together. Now, we just want to say a massive, massive thank you to everybody that's been listening to Ghosts in the Mountains. Every single listen, like, share, subscribe on our YouTube, reviews on Apple Podcasts, all of that stuff helps us in the algorithm, and we very much appreciate you all helping us with that. But your continued support is what keeps us going. So if you want to know more about what we're doing, please head over to ghostsinthemountains.com. If you yourself have experienced some sort of strange, wild, paranormal experience, ghost, goblin, you name it. If you experienced it and feel like sharing it with us on the podcast, you can write to us at ghostsinthemountains@gmail.com. We love to hear your stories. It's kind of hard for us to be able to write back to everybody that writes in, but believe me, we try to read as many of your emails as we possibly can, and we try to reply to as many of your emails as we possibly can. So thank you all so much for writing in, sharing your stories, and most importantly, just going with us on this wild and crazy ride. We're about to go on to the midnight broadcast where we talk about all kinds of different stuff. Sometimes we go fully down the rabbit hole with paranormal. Sometimes me and Austin are just shooting the breeze about God knows what we get into, but we hope that you find it entertaining. So either way, thank you for listening again, and we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Ghosts in the Mountains. We'll see you next week, everybody. Stay spooky. Well, now I 100% know if I were a younger man and didn't have a beautiful wife, now I got a great strategy of how to pick up a girl.
Just show up with a deer?
Yeah, just show up with a dead animal. I'd be like, do you love me? Are you in love with me? Let's have a baby and live in your 5-foot square room. And look, here's the deal. I'm sure your mom's great and all, but I'm going to leave in the mornings and she's like never going to see me.
Sounds like every teenage relationship.
I mean, yeah, maybe we're all Judaculla. All right, there's your Keister egg. We hope to hear you, or we hope that you hear us on the midnight broadcast. Good night, everybody.